Do you ever feel stuck? Like no matter how hard you push yourself at work or in life, you just can't find the motivation to keep on going? Well, you're not alone. The problem isn't you. The problem is how we think about motivation. Most of us have been taught to chase rewards, deadlines, and promotions. But according to the great book, Drive by Daniel Pink, right here, we're doing it all wrong. In today's video, I'm gonna break down the 3 key elements that actually drive human motivation: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And then show you how understanding these 3 key motivators can lead to more personal and professional fulfillment. Let's dive in. For decades, the prevailing belief was that you drive motivation through either carrots, rewards, or sticks, punishments. You either reward the good behavior or you punish the bad behavior. Daniel Pink calls this motivation 2.0, which is a system built for simple, repetitive tasks. Think of a factory where workers are on an assembly line and they get paid for their output. But here's the problem. Most of us, and especially if you're sitting here watching this video, don't live in that world anymore. Most of us today work in creative and knowledge-based jobs where we solve complex problems and not just repetitive, simple tasks. When your job requires creativity and problem solving, motivation 2.0 of rewards and punishments simply doesn't work. In fact, what the science shows is that it actually often backfires and over time reduces the motivation of that worker, in this case, you. So now you might be wondering, well, if money and rewards don't work, what does? And this is the exact question that I've thought about throughout my career as an engineer. Earlier on, I was full-hearted in belief that hitting external milestones, getting promotions, and receiving recognition is all that I would need to be forever motivated. And while those things do matter, they're only a subset of what you need to live your peak life. It takes more than that to provide the long-term motivation to see that long horizon of not just what you need to be this year, but what you need to be 10 years from now to live the life that you've always dreamed of. And what's really kept me motivated to push through those challenging projects of the tight deadlines, the long hours, and the problem solving that I thought I simply couldn't do was intrinsic motivation. That sense of growth, that I'm becoming more than I was. The sense of autonomy, that I get to choose how and when I do my work. And of course, knowing that what I'm doing actually makes an impact in the world. Understanding this shift has been crucial in my own professional journey and leading teams. In the book, Pink introduces these 3 critical concepts, the ones that are linked to true motivation for a lifetime: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And now let's break down each one of those and see how they apply. Autonomy is the power to choose. It's the ability to choose how you do your work. Studies show, and these are all referenced in Pink's book, that when people have the power, the ability to choose when, where, and how they work, they're far more engaged and productive. Companies like Google have capitalized on this. And a great example is how they give employees 20% of their time to work on any project that they want with anyone that they choose. The results of this are things that we use every single day, like Gmail and Google Maps. These resulted not from a top-down decision to work on them and develop them, but instead giving the employees the time to pursue something that they were passionate about. And now if you're in a leadership role, you can consider how to roll this out to your team. Give your team more flexibility so that they have more control over their life and their work. And for yourself, set your own deadlines and look at how your day's structured and try to reorganize it to maximize your flow. Next up, we have mastery, which is the joy of getting better. Mastery is about that urge to get better at something that's meaningful. We're wired to love progress, but not just any progress. It has to be something challenging enough to push outside of our comfort zone, but not so challenging that we feel overwhelmed and stuck. One thing in the book that stood out to me is how Pink talks about deliberate practice, because it's not just about doing the reps. Deliberate practice is something that's structured, focused, and challenging. And if you've ever worked on a skill and felt that sense of satisfying improvement, you know exactly what I mean. It's when at the start of the day you couldn't do something, like a trick on a skateboard or a song on the piano, but after a couple hours of practice, you have it nailed. A tip for this is to set small, achievable goals and then track your progress to them over time. For example, this past year I've been learning piano, and using an app called Simply Piano. On there, I can see the songs that I've played and the rating that I got on them between 1 to 3 stars. And by seeing more and more 3 stars, I can see my progress. And I can also go back to ones that I didn't do as well, and then say maybe a week or 2 after, I'm able to do them much better. And then we have the third key component, and that is purpose, which is all about the bigger picture. Purpose is about connecting your work to something bigger than yourself. People are more motivated when they believe that what their time is being spent on contributes to more than just themselves. Companies like Patagonia really embrace this, and their ethos inspires their employees to do more by knowing that their work contributes to things like environmental concerns. And now in your life, think about what you do and how it contributes to someone else or something bigger. There's a great story about the mission to the moon, and there was an interviewer that was going around, and when he asked the janitor, "What do you do here?" He said, "Sir, I'm helping people get to the moon." Because it's not just about picking up trash or cleaning the floors. Every person is doing something that contributes to something larger than themselves, and often all it takes to see that is our own reframing. Now let's look at the science behind drive and its principles. The science here is really fascinating, and in a lot of cases, different than what you would expect. It was very non-intuitive. Studies in behavioral psychology show that extrinsic rewards often diminish over intrinsic motivation. This is called the overjustification effect. An example of this is if you have kids and they need to clean their room. You can pay them to do that, which they'll do. But then after they get that reward, they're not going to want to clean their room unless they're paid to again. And then this has that diminishing effect that all of a sudden that money doesn't become as meaningful and you have to pay them more and more. Compare that to creating that intrinsic motivation for how they feel when their room's clean. Then they're going to want to keep it clean without having to be rewarded. In one study, children who were rewarded for drawing stopped enjoying and stopped practicing the drawing once that reward was removed. While another group of kids who weren't rewarded at all did not have that diminishing effect because there was no reward to remove. Instead, they were intrinsically motivated to draw because they enjoyed drawing. The takeaway to this is that when you rely on external incentives, you risk killing the natural joy that people get from doing that job. And to apply this to your own life, instead of focusing on the reward, find ways to enjoy the process of it instead. And now let's look at how you can apply these lessons to your life. Here are 3 ways that you can apply the principles in drive today. First up, redesign your environment. Give yourself more autonomy. If you're stuck in a rigid routine, experiment with flexible work hours. And autonomy isn't just about when and where you work. It's also about feeling empowered to make the critical decisions that affect your work and life. By redesigning your environment to help support more autonomy, you create the space for creativity and innovation to thrive. For example, you can set up your workspace to inspire more creativity, or introduce more flexibility in your tasks to leave the room for that innovation to break through. And don't underestimate the impact of small changes. Things like just shifting the hours that you work can give you more time and when you're naturally going to be more focused and able to hit flow. Next up, we have to set mastery-driven goals. Focus on the skills you want to improve and track your progress towards them regularly. When we don't track our progress, there's a tendency to continually and gradually raise the bar, which always leads to frustration about your growth. Because as humans, we don't see the gain of where we've come from. Instead, we always see the gap towards where we want to be. Tracking this instead allows us to celebrate those wins and see how far we've come. And if you're interested in more of this, check out the video up here, which is all about my New Year routine for setting better goals. The key thing is to prevent yourself from falling into a trap of thinking you haven't done enough, when instead it's just not having the visibility of all the growth that you've made. And the third way that we can apply the principles of drive into our life today is to reconnect with purpose. So my challenge to you is to write down what you do and why it makes an impact in the world. And then look at this and see how it connects to your long-term vision of yourself. I try to do this at least once a year and oftentimes once a quarter. And that helps me stay grounded and making sure that I'm rowing in the right direction. There's a lot of power in having consistent reflection because oftentimes we're so hypercharged with progress that we forget to look back, see where we've come, and then look forward to make sure that we're still going in the right direction. When we take the time to look back at how our actions align with our purpose, we're going to be less likely to feel lost or disconnected. Or if we do, we know that it's time for a pivot and to pick a new course. Without this process, it's easy to focus on that next shiny object and not make the actual progress towards the things that matter, which is what will lead to burnout, frustration, and ultimately a loss of motivation. Now to wrap it up, if there's one thing to focus on from this book, it's that our real motivation comes from within. By focusing on our autonomy, mastery, and purpose, you can unlock a deeper, more sustainable drive in everything you do. And I'd love if you let me know down in the comments what approach you're going to take to find more motivation in life. Is it going to be purpose, mastery, or your autonomy? Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to continually get updates on my new videos all about how we can design, build, and live our peak life. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next one up here.